Remember Cat? In 2017, Cat, short for Knife Ability Test, exploded from a small beta to one of the largest Roblox games on the entire platform. Its rise to fame would be through its unique gameplay and trading system, making it rapidly take over Roblox and YouTube. Cat sits at a mind-blowing 1.4 billion visits and would regularly see tens of thousands of concurrent players. However, fast forward to 2025, and things have changed a lot. I've never seen such an incompetent developer. It's just sad considering the potential it once had. Skill to win, 25%, pay to win, 75%. You might be wondering, how did we get here? To find out, we must go back to where it all began. Cat was released on January 19, 2017 and was developed by a player named Firza. Unlike other Roblox games with intricate stories, Cat's objective was simple: use the game's weapons to kill other players. While combat games typically use guns as the primary weapon and knives as a secondary, Firza would take a different approach, focusing more so on throwable knives. Different knives would have different abilities, such as explosives or lasers. In the beta, players were given access to every weapon, allowing them to experiment with them as much as they wanted. As the game's player base steadily grew, Firza decided to release an update, locking the abilities and special weapons behind a new in-game currency. While this would initially upset some players, I swear, Cat used to be about testing knives and guns and stuff for free. Everything was free. They ruined it by making it another grindy game. However, this was a much needed update. While everyone having all the cool items might seem fun, if you want players to continue playing your game, you have to give them a reason to do so. While Firza did rip off some elements from other popular games, such as some assets being taken from TF2, or one of the new game modes being a copy of Murder Mystery 2. After all, which Roblox game is 100% original? The way this update was implemented, along with the fast-paced gameplay and mechanics, created a unique and satisfying experience. While the gameplay was pretty fun, there was still one piece to this update which would take the game to the next level. You see, trading would tie actual real Robux value to the items, creating its own server-wide economy. This would encourage players to invest more time in trying to collect limited-time items, with the chance that they would go up in value. Also, trading would force players to socialize much more, with whole Discord communities forming around it. This is the reason why, despite being so old, games like CSGO were relevant for so long. This is important to keep in mind, as later, trading would come back to haunt the game in the worst way possible. For now though, all of these elements would create a large and very dedicated community to form around the game. This is when the game would really begin to take off. YouTube videos posted on the game would garner millions of views, and often, the game could be seen on the front page of Roblox with tens of thousands of active players. But just as everything seemed to be going perfectly, subtle cracks would begin to form. With most combat games like CSGO or Call of Duty, if you play the game for the first time, you might find yourself in a lobby filled with tryhards. While playing against them is surely annoying, these players are just more skilled than you. In Cat, however, special abilities and weapons were far too broken. The ghost knife, for example, would allow your knife to go through walls. While this was annoying, at least anyone could unlock it with enough time spent playing. Other weapons such as a Tesla knife, which would allow you to kill multiple players with one attack, would be accessible only through spending Robux. This would make the casual player base of the game suffer, often getting destroyed over and over again, making the game unfun. Players would take to forums ranting, "Cat is very pay to win. It clearly favors those who buy any of its game passes. I'm a former Cat player, and this is the very thing that made me quit the game." Skill to win, 25%. Pay to win, 75%. While paywalling OP weapons was questionable business, Firza would at least try her best to balance them out, constantly updating and tweaking them. However, this was still nothing compared to the problem looming behind the scenes. You see, most Roblox games with this level of success have entire development teams behind them, ensuring everything runs smoothly. Cat, however, was mostly a solo project by Firza. While there were people who assisted with segments of the game, the majority of it was still programmed by one person. What this means is that the game's code itself was poorly written and was riddled with endless bugs. Sometimes, the map would let you phase through it, letting you stand on top of it. Other glitches would be more game-breaking, like you spawning above the map, or one that would literally make you invincible. Besides this, the game was also filled with hackers, making the experience even more unplayable. In the midst of all of this chaos, Firza was nowhere to be found. While all of this was pretty bad, remember how I mentioned the game's biggest strength would also end up being its biggest downfall? In November 2021, somehow, exploiters were able to find a bug which would allow them to duplicate items. If this was left unfixed, the market would suddenly be flooded with rare items, making them practically worthless. This would effectively destroy the whole game's economy. As someone who's been in the trading community for a long time, it's sad to see how Cat went from a simple knife game to dupers and exploiters all over the place. It's sad to see my non-duped Karambit go to because of dupers. Realizing the gravity of the situation, 2 days after this came to light, Firza would suddenly return from her hiatus, releasing an emergency update. This would include some bug fixes, a new map, and a new disrespect mechanic. While players were hoping for the exploit to be fixed, she would post, "Trading is disabled for a short time. I am extremely sorry for the inconvenience caused. A full update will be coming December." However, as the Christmas update rolled around, she would make a couple minor changes with no mention of trading returning.
Without trading, the game has just been getting more and more boring and less people are actually playing the game.
At this point, the game would still average nearly 10,000 concurrent players. While a drop from its peak, the game was still far from dead. Players were hopeful that trading would be back sooner than later. But as days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, players' patience was beginning to grow thin. I used to play Cat like every day, but when Firza removed trading, it all went way downhill for me. I can't believe a developer could be that incompetent. A couple months later, Cat would get an April Fool's update, which consisted of adding a new AFK button and fixing some minor bugs. Once again, with no mention of fixing trading. As time went on, the lack of updates would erode Cat's player base another 3/4, with it struggling to pull even 2,000 active players.
This downwards trend also applies to my channel's viewership. Without updates, there is no content. Everyone whose content is primarily based on Cat is struggling.
People would constantly message Firza, asking when trading would return. Instead of giving players an answer, she would end up deleting her Twitter account and go completely inactive on Roblox. We can imagine a constant barrage of thousands of messages begging her to fix the game probably got pretty annoying. However, could you blame these players for being upset? When you've made empty promises and left them in the dark for so long, what do you expect? With the deletion of her Twitter account, she was sending out a clear message. She no longer wanted to be involved in the development of Cat. Firza will probably never come back and update the game like she used to. It's sad, but as a developer myself, I know how burnout and personal issues can affect a project. In 2025, mobile players accounted for 80% of Roblox's total player base. Imagine the damage to Cat's player base when a recent bug made the game impossible to access on mobile devices. Just to rub more salt in the wound, all Roblox games have something known as a content maturity label, which essentially is there to protect kids, letting them know the maturity level of the game. Keep in mind, this takes hardly a couple minutes to set up through Roblox Studio. Firza, however, could not even be bothered to set this up. This made the game inaccessible to another large chunk of Roblox players. Today, the lack of updates and bugs make the game borderline unplayable. It's sad, but these factors have taken a major toll on the game's player base, with it being common to see the game struggling to pull even a couple hundred active players.